All right, so let's just talk through a few more little details. One thing that seems to throw people off is, let's say that, this is a sidewalk. There are usually cracks in the sidewalk, right? What tends to throw people off is sometimes they want to make these cracks in the sidewalk angled. So first of all, remember, let's say I was trying to figure out where to make these angled. Where is this angle going to? It's going to nowhere. So remember, there's no time where you should be just guessing where an angle goes to. So if it's an angle, it's going to go here. So there's no way that that's going to work. So one way to think about this, here's my rectangle, here's the edge. When I get to the next chunk of concrete, that front edge, I just wouldn't be seeing that. One kind of easy way to make sidewalk cracks is if I use the bottom of this building, and I'm going to kind of make a corner here. If I use the bottom of this building and continue that, I get my first corner. People think that these are going to be angled, but in reality, they need to be parallel to the horizon line. If you look real closely, see that? That's the back end of our box. So then this just becomes vertical. Same over here. This part right here, I match that up. So sometimes you have to think about this basic construction almost backwards, where you're kind of starting with the top of it and then you're plugging in the elements for the other part to make sense. So now that I have this one, this is going to become a repeating element. There's a formula, so you don't have to guess how far apart they should be. One thing I have to decide is how close do I want them, the first two, to be. So if this is my first one, as things get farther away, they're going to get closer together. They're going to compress visually. So I don't want this to be the same amount. So I get to kind of choose on the first ones. Maybe I kind of like it there. So I plug in that and I finish off this side. Same thing over here. This isn't going to compress in space. So what I can do on this one is once again measure. So the next chunk concrete would be right about there. So now remember, this line went to the vanishing point. So this line is also going to angle to the vanishing point. Sometimes they seem a little extreme. As you move away from the center, or as you get closer to the center, your angles get a little bit more like wider or more acute. Anything is going to follow this formula. So let's say that I want to make it look like there's something on top of this building, like an air conditioning duct or something like that. So I'm still drawing my rectangle. But I'm going to say that this is, it would continue below here. But once again, top, to get that final edge, we go here. And then I just have to make sure that I finish it off to where it makes sense. It can't go too long, otherwise it would be longer than the building. But anything on top, anything next to it, it all works the same. Maybe I want to make it look like there's a vending machine. This is one of those backwards kind of thinking. I have to think about where I want it to be, and it has to kind of connect right here, because my vending machine is going to be almost like stuck to the side of that building. So I'm going to start with that side. But then besides that, I'm drawing my face my box. I need to draw from the three corners. I'm going to see a lot less of the top of this because it's almost at eye level. And once again, you don't have to draw all the way to the end. It just depends on how long I want this to be. So, if I have like a vending machine kind of sticking out here, once I erase these, okay, it looks like it's real close to it because of this right here. this and this, I gave a teeny bit of space. If I wanted it to look like it was connected to the wall, then I need the edge to be in that same angle. I put it a little bit lower so that there's a little bit of space, you know, for the plugs and all that, because it's not actually connected to the wall. But if you want it to look more connected or closer to the wall, then make sure that this corner right here gets right up in that angle. So let's say you wanted a small thing, like a little community garden or something like that. This is just roughly sketched out, not, you know, with a T-square. But you can kind of see how you can just make, you know, maybe this is like a chain link fence kind of a thing. If it's this high, I could see inside of it. Same thing, all these like little planter boxes would be angled there. So if these are all like your little boxes, this is, you know, that idea of that thumbnail sketch, you're just sketching something out. This is like your box, but this is kind of one of those see-through boxes. So these will all be horizontal, these will all be vertical, go there, and then you can put a box inside the box, kind of go from there. Okay, so let's talk about the repeated elements. This could be cracks in a sidewalk, getting closer together as you see them farther down the road. Or maybe it's like a street light or something. All right, so now the formula. Draw the first two elements. So if you were doing street lights or something, draw the first two. So now what I need to do is find the middle of this first one. That's my midpoint. I'm gonna draw the lightest line that I can possibly from here to the vanishing point, okay? I'm gonna erase this later, so I need to make this as minimal as possible. I don't even have to draw the whole line if I don't want to. I can kinda come in here and make like a real like late dotted kind of line, even if it's just barely. I have this first line, I have the second line, and this third line, and I have a midline. So what I'm gonna do now to find the next one, I am going to start at this corner. I am going to see where this line, this one, and that midline. So I'm going from right here, where this edge of the crack hits that side. And this is the one time you're breaking the rule. Don't worry about the vanishing point. But I need to see right here where this line and that midpoint intersect. I'm looking for that. And then I'm gonna make a mark right here. So that part right there is where my next line is gonna be. And then I would do the same thing, because I went from this one here. Now I'm gonna go to this one. So from here, where does it intersect? And draw across. So now I have these blocks that are getting closer together in a predictable formula. That would apply same thing for streetlights, like we talked about before. As long as, say, I had a streetlight that I wanted to be like this tall. Let's say I have the first stoplight. I'm gonna make those guidelines. I'm gonna make a guideline really, really light. Put a rough, really, really light guideline in there from the middle. So let's say I want my second one to be right there. To find the next one, I pick a side. It doesn't matter. I can go from the top. I can go from the bottom. I'm gonna go from here, find where it intersects. Sorry. If I went along here, my next one's gonna be right there. I drill it in between the two guidelines, and then I would continue. Okay, so you get all the information you need for a one-point perspective to do a city. You can get creative. You can make your city look like it's underwater. You can make it, you know, outer space, futuristic. What you're gonna get graded on is one-point construction. So I need to see block-style buildings. I need to see doors and windows that are all done correctly. You need to have a few buildings You have to have enough buildings to where this doesn't look like there's one building and that the rest of the earth doesn't exist. You do need to think about your background a little bit. So one thing you can do is if you make enough buildings, let's say if you have another building here, that will actually cover up the horizon line and it won't look like it goes to endless space. So you need to have at least, a bare minimum, 5 buildings. You need to have doors and windows to be able to get into them, and no loopholes. You can't say it's a futuristic building that you just like go through with osmosis. You gotta have doors and windows. You need to have some other details. This is your choice. Sorry, you need to have some sort of road as well. Details are, if you want to make a bench, if you want to make a vending machine, if you want to make this up here, if you want to make a sign, any of that is fine. Sidewalks, that counts as extra details. Maybe you have all your buildings and you still can see a little bit of the background and it still looks empty. At that point, if you want to make a mountain range back here, kind of loosely or something like that, that will at least give us the feeling that it just doesn't go on for eternity to endless space. One word of caution, have fun with this, but the details are these sorts of things, the 1-point perspective details. You can add extras after you've done all these requirements. So after you do this, if you want to add in people, if you want to add in cars, any of that's fine, but they have to make sense in the space, and that's not going to count towards your grade quite as much, so you can't ignore the other parts. The other part is you cannot have loopholes like we talked about the osmosis building. You can't have a city that you say got bombed and it's all rubble. You could maybe have one corner kind of coming off as long as the rest of the building is makes sense. So if you want to have something that's been abandoned and it's crumbling or something like that, totally fine. The other thing you cannot do is you cannot add in too much blood and guts. So by that, I mean, if you want to make a zombie apocalypse and there are zombies in the street, that's fine. Once again, don't spend too much time on that and neglect the actual assignment. But you cannot have dead people all over your city. We're not going to look for people hanging out of the windows and just death everywhere. All right, we'll talk about that a little bit more in class, but any questions, let me know.